Now, in this session, we're going to talk about creating a sales process. That's correct. Every sales great person has a sales process. Now, the best way to create this and to create an example that we can all understand is I want you to pretend that you're baking cake. You're baking a cake and that you're baking this cake and then you never really follow a recipe and you just kind of wing things. You just throw things together, just keep on adding whatever you want, and then the cake comes out a certain way. Now, all of a sudden, everybody loves that cake. All of a sudden, you could do that same thing. You can create the same cake, but it just does not taste the same. The third week, you do it again, and once again, it doesn't taste just like the first time you did it. There's no consistency in your cake selling process or cake making process. And the reason for that is because you don't really have a particular recipe. And so every time that you do something or you try it again, you add something more, you add something less. And because you're doing that, your cake will never be consistent in the terms of its outcome. So what you want to do is to become consistent. In selling, we need to become consistent. If we don't have a recipe, also known as a sales process, we are not going to be able to be consistent at selling. And much like the cake analogy, you are going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated because you're like, okay, I sold before, but why am I not selling now? Well, maybe because you don't have a sales process and your recipe keeps on changing. So you don't really know when you're successful or why you're successful because you keep on changing things. So if you want consistency, you need to have a sales process. So what we're going to do is that we're going to develop a sales process just for you. Now, here is a suggestive sales process that I want you to tailor to your part or to your service or to your program, right? This sales process has 7 steps. The first one is the research phase. This is where we research our customers, list up all our features, benefits, and advantages. Talk about who we're going to target, right? Your TAM profile, who's going to buy your product. This is the research that we're going to do before we actually meet a customer. The next phase is to actually meet with the customer. Now, when we meet with the customer, we're going to ask a lot of questions, and we're going to talk about that in another module or another video. We're going to try to find out what they need, what the benefits are, what benefits our products can provide them. But we need to get into the question and answer, section first for us to be able to find that out. Once we get a good understanding of what the customer actually needs or what the customer might actually be needing about our products and our services, we then move on to the presentation phase. This is where we either do a one-on-one presentation across the table or a formal presentation with a PowerPoint with projectors, or maybe just something off your tablet, your computer, your laptop, whatever it is. And our goal is to be able to show them all the different things. That's the presentation section. The presentation should be aimed at what they need and what they are requesting. The next phase is the demo. Maybe there you can actually do a demo. Show them how the product works. Show them how you can actually help them. This is the how-to version of, so that they become comfortable with the product. Once we've done the demo, the next phase is to actually present all the different options that we offer as a company. So if you have a product or services, what are the options that we're offering? When we get into the pricing phase, which is the next step, we're going to be able to say, hey, we have all these options. Now let's put together some option prices for you. We want to show them the pricing, all the different options, the associated pricing, and then the last step is pretty much we close the sale. Now, okay, if you established a sales process and you found the right sales process, is it always going to work? What's the answer? Of course not. It's not going to happen always. It's not going to work always, but here's what's going to happen. You're going to use this process and you're going to realize as you go through the process, there are certain things that don't feel right or turn out right. In other words, while you're doing the presentation, you start saying, maybe that there's something you should be doing in the presentation that's different because the customer is not responding. Or maybe when you're doing the demo, you realize that maybe not doing a how-to, maybe a video would be better when we're doing a demo. What I'm getting through here is this, is that when you establish your sales process, you're going to tweak this thing. You're going to keep tweaking it until it becomes yours, until it becomes customized just for you. But you have to have a sales process. Much like the cake analogy, what you have is a recipe, but what you're going to notice is this, is that if you start tweaking tweak the recipe, you might figure that you're adding too much flour. You might pull back into it, right? So maybe in the presentation for your sales, you might be putting too much information. Maybe you should pull back some information. You're adjusting the recipe or the sales process. What will happen over time is that this will become so much of a second nature that it becomes perfect, that it becomes second nature, that you can do it instantly off the top of your head without even thinking about it. And that is when your personality infuses and combines with the presentation, knowing that when you do it, it sounds so natural that people start to say, you know what, I believe that person and what they are saying. At this point, you reach a level of sales mastery that a lot of people don't even achieve. Why? Because they do not stick to a sales process. The key is to be able to develop a sales process, a recipe, implement the process, tweak it, adjust it so that it becomes yours. Now, here's one more thing. I want you to think about this. The sales cycle is the next thing I want to talk about. Now, here is something that you definitely want to be able to know, okay? A sales cycle is how long it takes you from the moment that you meet the customer for the very first time. That's when you really start everything, is when you meet with them for the first time, to when you actually close the sale. How long did that take? That's the sales cycle. Now, let's say, for example, it takes a week. And in some cases, it might even take even longer, or it might even just happen right there and then when you see them. So for example, let's say you're trying to get them to use a software. Knowing how long that sales cycle will take is very important, because if you know that your sales cycle can take 2 to 3 weeks, then maybe you can actually plan for that. You can work the whole process for that, right? And what are your main goal is? Your main goal is to be able to shorten the sales cycle, because that increases the amount of sales that we have. So again, having a sales process will allow you to be able to put you and give you a roadmap on how to sell. And then you measure your sales cycle, and you can say, hey, it may be long. How do I shorten it? Maybe that's when you need to tweak your presentation and start working on your sales process, that the cycle becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. And then to the part that really it's not going to get any shorter. But do you guys get this idea? How can you create a sales process? And then how can you shorten your sales cycle? That right there is the main goal. But guess what? Because you have a process, you know where you are adjusting things and where you can improve certain items, okay? That's the most amazing part about it, rather than not knowing where you need to fix certain areas, okay? So in this exercise, what I want you to do right now is I want you to think about your own sales process, list out your sales process, draw it out, take 10 to 15 minutes or even longer, right? And create that sales process. Always understand that your sales process should never be longer than 7 steps, because that might be a little bit too long. 7 simplistic steps that you need to be able to create. And just to let you guys know, if your sales process all of a sudden becomes 5, that's perfectly fine. What we really want to see is a step process between 5 to 7 steps and nothing more than that. So I want you guys to right now grab a pen, grab a paper, work by yourself or work with your team to actually put together a correct sales process that you guys want to do. So go ahead and do that before you move on to the next video.